Namaste and good morning. Let's start the class with the prayers. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Grathitam Pranamuna Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritvarshinim Bhagavati Mashtadishadhyayane Amutvam Sandhame Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshine Namo Astu Te Vyas Vishal Buddhe Full Arvind Ayat Patra Netar येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञानमया प्रदीपः परपान्न पारिजाताये तोत्र वेत्र एकपानये ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाये गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोक्ता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत् वसुदेव वसुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोप शल्ये ग्राहवती कृपेन वहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोरमकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तने सो तीर्ना खलु पांडवै रन्नदी के वर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोजमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नानाख्यानक केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपद रह पेपिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपा तमहं वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यस्तवे वेदे सांगपद क्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यान अवस्थित तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. From these prayers you can see that we are studying Bhagavad Gita. So this is a stuti of admiration of Bhagavad Gita itself, the scripture, Rishi who wrote it, Lord Krishna, whose mouth these words came from during that Mahabharat war. So we are being very thankful because all the lessons we learn from Bhagavad Gita, we can apply, we can practice, we can improve our own life, we can develop our personality. It's very practical scripture. We are on chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga. And we learned last week what Karam Yoga is. Karam Yoga. And how when we apply our intellect properly, when we can look at the ultimate goal clearly, it becomes a Buddhi Yoga also. And that's what Lord Krishna is telling us. And he gave us the definitions of yoga also. Yoga karmasu kaushalam and smatvam yoga uchyate. Equanimity of the mind, skillfulness of the actions. That's all Karam Yoga. So step by step, he's just teaching us. But the practice we have to do. No guru can practice for us. No God can practice for us. No parent can practice for us. We have to practice ourselves. Okay, that's where the responsibility lies. So we ended our last week's class with verse number 51, where Lord Krishna is saying, the wise, possessed of knowledge, having abandoned the fruits of their actions. If we have not learned how to do the karam, our duties, keeping the fruits out of your mind, you have not become wise yet. According to Lord Krishna, the wise possessed of knowledge, having abandoned the fruits of their actions and freed from the fetters of birth, go to the state which is beyond all evil. Karam jam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishina. Janam bandh vinirmukta padam gachanti anamya. Very powerful verse. We got to bring it into our actions. Maybe step by step, slowly but surely, we should know what are we doing, why are we doing, how to do it, And we are achieving. Padam gachanti anamyam. That is the abode which is beyond suffering, which is devoid of evil. Every human being engages in fruitive actions. We see that. Why do we do that? Because we think we'll get some kind of a happiness. But when we get the fruits, we find there's not that much happiness, not that kind of a satisfaction. In fact, instead of the happiness, sometimes we feel miserable. As a result, practically everyone in this world is unhappy. Some suffer from the miseries of their own body and mind. Some are tormented by their family members. Some suffer from lack of money or necessities of life. So materially minded people know they are unhappy. And they always think that somebody who has more than them must be more happy. So that's why they keep on running towards the fruits of the actions, or the direction towards the material growth. Better house, better job, better this, better that. This is called a blind pursuit, which has been going on not just few years, few lifetimes. And there's no sight of happiness. Now Lord Krishna is telling us very clearly, if people could realize that nobody has ever achieved happiness by engaging in the fruitive work. Only then we'll make a U-turn towards the spiritual life. Otherwise, we are just wasting our life after life. So that's why he said, renounce attachment to the fruits of your actions. Offer everything to God. Serenely accept everything as his Prasad. Become free from bondage of life. This is the advice of Lord Krishna. Now it's up to us to see how many of the actions we do. All day long we do actions. How many actions we do without keeping the fruit in mind. Now let's look at verse number 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhi vyatitarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrutvasya shrutasya cha. Yada means when, te means they. Moha kalilam, mire of delusion. Buddhi, intellect. Vyatitarishyati, crosses beyond. Tada then, gantasi, you shall attain. Nirvedam, to indifference. Shrutvasya, what has to be heard. Shrutasya, what has been heard. Cha means and. When your intellect crosses beyond the mire of delusion, then you shall attain to indifference as to what has been heard and what has to be heard. This is detachment. When you rise above the mire of delusion, that means when the intellect has become purer, when the intellect has lost all the present charms of the sense experiences. Because intellect is the one which is deciding, maybe going there, maybe having this, maybe obtaining this, I'll be happy. Decision-making faculty is the intellect. So the cause of delusion is conceived of as the indescribable power called Maya. See, this delusion is the Maya. Moha Kalilam, another term for that is Maya. Maya comes to play in two distinct modes of expressions at two different layers of our personality. At the intellectual level and at the mental level. Intellectual level, it expresses as a doubt and hesitation. And that's what's called veiling or varna. That's why the person under this avarna, that is, the intellect has come under the veiling. Cannot see it clearly. This is called ignorance. And then what happens? Mind starts to project something else. Mind is the one which says then, yeah, this world can give me happiness. Whatever I achieve, whatever I have heard before and will hear, that means the senses. It's not only something which is only related to the sound. That means other senses also. What I have seen before, what I will see, what I have eaten before, what will I eat? I have gone somewhere, where else I can go? That's all Maya. So when there's a veiling, you cannot see it clearly, that's avarna. And then from that avarna comes the second part of Maya, vikshepa, agitations of the mind. Mind starts to project the world of the non-self and superimposes upon it that this is the firm idea. By having another newer model of car or going to a certain place, I have seen these many countries, I want to see something else. That's a delusion. So the whole sense world he is indicating over here. So what has been heard is Shrutam, and what is yet to be heard, Shrotavam. Seen and unseen, smelt and unsmelt, tasted and not tasted, touched and not yet touched, all of it. Okay. So now you may ask a question. When shall I attain true conviction of the self? After crossing beyond the veil of ignorance, this avarna, and obtain wisdom through the discrimination of the self and the non-self. Because we want that. We want to reach there. But how and when will reach there? Let's look at verse number 53. Shruti viprati pannate yada sathasyati nischala samadhau achalaha buddhi tada yogam avapyasi. Shruti viprati tanna. Perplexed by what you have heard. Viprati panna. Te means yours. Yada means when. Sathasyati shall stand. Nischala, immovable, steadfast. Samadhau, in the samadhi. Achalaha, steady. Buddhi, intellect. So buddhi which keeps on doubting, then achal buddhi. Tada means then, yogam, yoga. Over here this means the self-realization. Avapyasi, you shall attain. When your intellect, though perplexed by what you have heard, shall stand immovable and steady in the self, then you shall attain self-realization. So doubtful intellect will not take us there. The buddhi has to become steady in the self. That's why Lord Krishna is going to tell us again and again in the rest of the scripture that absorb your mind and intellect into me and keep on doing your duties. Because as we advance on this spiritual path, our relationships, even our mental relationship, intellectual relationship becomes stronger and stronger with God. Right now, it is a relationship is with the outer world, and outer world keeps on changing. That's why our mind and intellect keeps on changing. If we have created a relationship, better relationship with God, and this is what achal is, the steadiness is. So when our intellect comes to have a steady equanimity, undisturbed by any of the experiences that reach in the outer world, in the inner world also. At that time, that individual is considered as having attained yoga. That's a yogi. Yukta, united oneness. Because ordinarily the mind just stays agitated, mind and intellect stays doubtful. Because through the sense intellects, we keep on getting more and more information. We don't put any kind of a filter. Sure, the inlets are there, but it's up to us to put the filters though. Don't let everything go in there. Be alert, be vigilant. So he says one is considered as having attained yoga only when one, even in the middle of the sensuousness, and even while these sense organs are letting in a flood of stimuli, does not at all get disturbed. There is an inner serenity and there's an equanimity. That's what we have to cultivate. So now Arjun has been listening very carefully, very calmly. You can see that how far he has come from that disturbed state of mind. From his question, we can see that. So in verse number 54, Arjun is asking a question. Sthit pragyasya ka bhasha, samadhistasya keshav, sthit dhi kim prabhashet, kim asit, vrajet kim. Sthit pragyasya. The sage or a muni or a yogi of a steady wisdom. Sthit. Steadiness is there because this is what Lord Krishna is talking about. Sthit pragya. Ka means what? Bhasha, description. Samadhistasya, of the person merged in the superconscious state, in the state of samadhi, fully absorbed in the consciousness. Keshav, that is Lord Krishna. Sthit dhi, the sage of steady wisdom. Kim means what or how. Prabhashet, talks. Kim asit, how does he sit? Vrajet kim, vrajet means walks. Kim means how. So what he's saying, if this buddhi, the dhi is so steady, how does he function in this world? And how will you describe this kind of a person? What, O Keshav, is the description of him who has steady wisdom? So in other words, he wants to know, how do we recognize a person like that? Who is merged in the superconscious state? Is he like a stone, a rock, a statue? How does one of steady wisdom speak? How does he sit and how does he work? Throughout Bhagavad Gita, Arjun has asked 16 sets of questions. In fact, this is the very first one he is asking. So there are 15 more sets in the rest of Bhagavad Gita. And they are about Karma Yoga, about Gyan Yoga, about the Bhakti Yoga. But over here we see that Arjun wishes to know the nature of the mind of a person who is in this state. And additionally, he wishes to know how this divine state of mind manifests in a person's behavior. Because this is the behavior. How do we talk? How do we sit? How do we walk? So this is what Arjun wants to know. So the despondent Arjuna, hysterical Arjuna, who forgot himself, has come to this level where he is fully, actively interested in the discussion now. He's paying full attention to be able to ask a question like this, so concise and so deep. So it's like almost like a double-forked question, you can say. A description of the state of mind in a man of realization merged in self-experience. And he's demanding an explanation of his behavior. How does he behave in this world? Okay, so more questions will come in chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 8, chapter 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17, and 18. So throughout Bhagavad Gita, we will see these questions asked. So these are the only questions, 16 sets of questions, and answers are given by Lord Krishna in detail, beautifully. And we'll see the answer of this question also. Okay. Let's look at how Lord Krishna is answering the question. Verse number 55. Prajhati yada kaman sarvan parth manogatan atmani ev atmana tushta sthit pragya tada uchyate. So this is a definition of a sthit pragya, because this is what he wanted to know. Prajhati, discards. Yada means when, kaman, desires. Okay, understand this desires, selfish desires first. Me and mine desires. What will I get out of it? Sarvan, all. Parth is for Arjun. Manogatan, of the mind. Atmani, in the self. Ev means only. Atmana, by the self. Tushtaha, satisfied. Sthit pragya, of steady wisdom. Tada uchyate, then is called. So Lord Krishna he has started answering Arjun's question here. And answer continues until the end of this chapter, by the way. Okay. When a man completely casts off, O Parth, all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then he is said to be one of steady wisdom. In the Puranas, we hear the stories that these desires, they keep on growing no matter how much we have. With the help of the stories, those rishis, they bring our attention to this part, so that maybe we'll become wise enough in this life so that selfishness goes away. Our own desires, they go away, or at least reduction in the desires. Otherwise, a king wishes to be the emperor of the whole world. The emperor aspires to be a celestial god, Devata. A celestial god seeks to be Indra, the king of the Devatas. the king of the Devata, desires to be Brahma. But still the thirst for material enjoyment does not get satiated. Purans talk like this. So that's why Lord Krishna is telling us, learn this technique. Turn the mind away from the material allurement. Renounce the desires of the senses. This kind of a person is considered a sthita pragya. What will happen? You'll be satisfied within yourself. Because the source of that satisfaction, the source of the enjoyment and the bliss and the joy is right here. It's not outside. This is the technique he is giving us. Katha Upanishad says the same thing. It even goes to the extent of saying that one who has renounced desires becomes God. So these selfish desires or the desires or the kamanai, they have kept us away. So we got to learn how to renounce them. It goes something like this. When one eliminates all selfish desires from the heart, then the materially fettered Jivatma attains freedom from birth and death and becomes godlike. Okay, so now we know clearly what the problem is. But to solve the problem, we have to do. So when a man completely casts off or part all the desires of the mind, we have to relieve our mind from these fetters. We have to relieve ourselves from this ignorance with the help of the right knowledge. And this is what he is doing over here. He is defining a description of a perfect person. Not only as one who has no desires, but also as one who has positively come to enjoy the bliss of the self. Two things are over here. See, prajahati yada kaman, then he says, atmani ev atmana tushta. That doesn't mean that after having no desire, person is miserable. Person is completely blissful. Because otherwise, as we grow, our demands also grow. We have seen that from childhood to youth to old age. Keep on growing, keep on growing. But in the self, the man of steady wisdom, the sthit pragya, is self-satisfied in the self. No more entertain any desire or appetite for the worldly objects. Whether it could be the bodily pleasure or mental or even intellectual, has come to live the very source of all bliss. And source of all bliss is Atma and Paramatma. Okay? So prajahati yada kaman sarvan parth manogatan. Atmani ev atmana tushta sthit pragya tata uchyate. At least wherever we are, get rid of the tamasic desires. Then the rajasic desires. Only then we can see how to get rid of the sattvic desires also. Because he's talking about all desires. Okay? So selfish desires, definitely we got to let them go. Cravings of the senses or satisfaction through the objects, we got to see that how intoxicated they are. Okay? Now number 56, he says, Dukheshu anudvigmana sukheshu vigat sipriha vitrag bhay krodha sthitadhi muni uchyate. Dukheshu, adversity. Dukh, anudvignamana, unshaken mind. Sukheshu, in pleasure, good times, vigatse preha, without clinging, without hankering, vigatse preha. With rag, bhay, krodha, free from attachment, fear and anger. Veet means they give up. Veet, gone. Rag means attachment. Bhay means fear. Anger means, the krodh means anger. Okay. This is a, technically that's how sometimes the words are written. So Veet goes before rag also, then Veet bhay also, Veet krodh also. So Veet rag means give up the craving for pleasure. Veet bhay means they remain free from fear. And Veet krodh is devoid of anger. So these three enemies this person has conquered. Because this enlightened person does not allow the mind to harbor in the material fetters. Sthitadhi, of a steady wisdom. Muni means sage, Uchyate means is called. He whose mind is not shaken by adversity. He did not say what kind of adversity, any adversity. It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be intellectual, it could be anything. Because there are some adversities, they come from the disorder of the body, the diseases of the body. Our body is somebody else's body we love. Then they could be from the objects outside. Okay, anything from outside can attack us. And then they could be unseen causes also. The earthquakes, the hurricanes, the fire, tornadoes. There could be anything. But sthit pragya person, a yogi, is not disturbed by any of it. Sure, when something like that comes, he will make the right decision. But the mind does not get disturbed. Think about that, mind. So he whose mind is not shaken by adversity, who does not hanker after pleasure, craving for the pleasure, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady wisdom. So this very stable being, mind is undisturbed in sorrow or in joy, unattached, fearless, no anger. He is a sage. Arjun wanted to know the description, and Lord Krishna is giving a very elaborate description of a Muni or a Sthit Pragya or a yogi. He's not done. Now he's telling us, Ya sarvatra anabhisneha tat prapye shubha shubham na abhinandati na dveshti tasya pragya pratisthita. Ya means who? Sarvatra. Everywhere, in all conditions. Anabhisneha, without attachment. Tat means that prapye, having obtained. Shubha ashubham, good and evil. Shubh and ashubh. Na abhinandati. Na means not, abhinandati means takes delights in or rejoice. Na dveshti, not hates. Tasya, of him, pragya, wisdom, pratishtita, is fixed. He who is everywhere without attachment. On meeting with anything good or bad, who neither rejoices nor hates, his wisdom is fixed. So again and again, Lord Krishna is choosing the right words to add more light to the answer he's trying to give it to Arjuna. So we can see that a person without attachment is facing this life squarely, well poised, established in wisdom, because this person knows, according to the prarabdha, there are some good times, there are not so good times, accepts everything squarely. Okay, because there's sometimes sunshine and sometimes storms in life. It's not that a sthita pragya's life is not in this world. It is in this world. Sometimes outer conditions, sometimes the personal karmas, sometimes the group karmas, effect of that is there. But he faces all of it serenely, calmly, without any disturbance. Does not get attached, does not say that now I am a sthita pragya, my life should be without any problems. Problems will come, but internally completely peaceful. So a mere detachment from things of life, like a running away from all this, is not a sign of perfection. Sign of perfection is when the mind stays equanimous. So balance in ourselves to face all the challenges of life. There are challenges in life. So Shubha as well as Ashubha. Perfect equanimity and no running away from the situation. Because Arjuna wanted to run away from this situation. No running away, just doing your duty. Because to live in attachment, thinking that only good things should happen to me, or only people should sing my glories, is living in slavery. Because we get attached to it. We think this is how it should be. That is a slavery. But the perfect one, Sthita Pragya, is he who with a divine freedom lives in the world, meeting all the joys and all the sorrows also. Because life by itself is a nature of a mixture of both good and bad. Avoiding the bad and striving to linger the experience of the good is to live very unintelligently. Again, we are looking at the fruits. We are not focusing fully on the karma. So a sthita pragya experiences the best and the worst in life with equal detachment. How? Fully established in the self. The very self. Let's do one more, then we'll have some discussion. 58. Yada saharte cha ayam kurma angani iv sarvasha indriyani indriya arthebhya tasya pragya pratishtita. Yada when saharte withdraws ayam, this means this yogi. Somebody is asking which chapter and which verse. Chapter 2, verse number 58. Kurma, turtle. Angani, limbs. Iv means like, sarvasha, fully. That means everywhere. Indriyani, the senses. Indriya arthebhya, from the sense objects. Tasya, of him, pragya, wisdom. Pratishtita, fixed in or steadfast in. When like the turtle, which withdraws on all sides its limbs, he withdraws his sense from the sense objects. Then his wisdom becomes steady. According to Yoga Sutras, Rishi Patanjali, he called this a pratyahara. So pratyahara is a practice which takes us towards established in the self. So he's giving us an example of a turtle. You throw a little stone at a turtle, it withdraws all the limbs inside because he thinks that there is some enemy out there. So that's how a yogi lives. There are sense objects everywhere. He just keeps the senses withdrawn in. Something is needed to live, sure, he goes, gets it. But still the mind is internally absorbed. So after explaining that a perfect one is ever satisfied in the self, he lives in perfect equanimity during adversity also and during good times also. That there is in him a complete absence of attachment to rejoicing and aversion. Now he is giving us this example. He says this person has a special knack of withdrawing the senses from all disturbing fields of objects. So this is called a simile. That's what he's using over here. Folding back the senses from any or all the fields of the activities. This is a capacity we need to cultivate. Pratyahara. Normally, without any control on our senses, we just let the senses go wherever they want to go. We just get fascinated with all of this. But an enlightened sage intelligently masters the senses. Senses are our tools. We need to learn how to use the senses for that higher purpose. Don't become a slave to the senses. So illustration used in this verse is that of a turtle, and whenever it encounters danger, the turtle protects itself by withdrawing its limbs. Okay, so we got to remember that also. And danger is there all the time for us. Very easy to slip. Very easy. So always look at it as a danger. Okay. So we'll stop it over here, and then Lord Krishna continues giving the answer to Arjun's questions in the rest of this chapter. So what I would like you to do, just make a notation, write down the questions, 2 questions, and then how he is answering. Is Lord Krishna's answer clear to you or not? Then we can have discussion about that also. How to put the answer together, because answer is very elaborate. Very elaborate. Because he wanted to make sure that we understand it properly. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om.